Oh my goodness. It's been so long. I'm biggity back, biggity back, biggity back. All right, let's see. Y'all know how we do. Should go, is she on? She's on. But I don't think I'm going to do that. Hi guys! Girls or whatever you identify as. It's Sheila, her homie and best friend, Manly Girl, and welcome. Y'all, it's been so long. It is so hot here. I'm finally gonna go over therapy session number 1. Vibe with me here again. This is the first episode. I'm not sure exactly the order we're gonna go in, but it's all about the information. So, I see me looking over here. I'm looking at my computer with my notes and everything. So, therapy session number 1. If you're not familiar with what I'm doing here, I wanted to create a segment going over things that I learned in therapy where we can get a perspective from an actual therapist on things. And so, if you don't know exactly what the segment is about, go ahead and I'm going to put the video somewhere where you can go watch that so you kind of know what's going on and what to expect. It's a short little video. I posted it a while ago. Life happened, but I'm back. So, same thing over here, y'all. Just, if you're new, something I love to do is to check on everyone's mental health. So, give me 3 or fewer words. Let's do that over here to describe your mental health. Stop what you're doing, drop them below. And yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is boundaries, fixing people, attachment theory and styles, and then we're going to go over wise mind or left and right brain thinking. Okay, in the big categories there may be some breakdown, so again, bear with me as I'm going through the information. If there's a specific format that you like, or you're like, okay, I like this order, or this really helped me, you know what I'm saying, make sure you let me know in the comments below. Get you something to drink, get you something to eat, whatever you indulge in or whatever. Definitely get a notepad or something because I got a lot of information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a breakdown of the categories. Then I'm going to go over some takeaways and things that we got from it. And then I'll go over, you know, what we can do to apply what we go over, okay? So I'm actually tell you kind of how I went into the session. Let's do this. This is around, I'm going to say MLK Day. We're going to have a lot of videos to do. And my cousin passed, rest in peace. And going into it, I'm starting with a new therapist. If you haven't watched my video about therapy, I'll also put that here somewhere as well, because I kind of talk in there about how I switch therapists sometimes depending on the cycle of my life, or sometimes things are going on. I might stop going to one. I might need a new therapist, whatever the case may be. So check out that video too. So we went into it, and I am very particular. I know what I want when I go to therapy. I'm very like results driven when it comes to therapy, very intentional. So my biggest things were wanting to have healthy relationships. And if you are, you know, frequent on the channel, I feel like that's not a surprise. That's a thing. It's a big thing for me. Healthy relationships. What are boundaries? A boundary is a line that marks the limits of an area. I want to clarify something, because when I see people talk about boundaries, a lot of people talk about boundaries in a way where the boundaries come off to where, how do I explain it? The best explanation I heard is, as far as the definition, is like, boundaries are made to protect you. Boundaries are made for you. They're not made for you to try to control other people and other people's actions and stuff. They're made for you. These are my expectation standards. These are the lines that I have made around myself and my non-negotiables. These are lines that you are not allowed to cross for me. It has nothing to do with necessarily other people, trying to force other people or be controlling. So you don't want to set boundaries trying to control people. You set boundaries for yourself so that you can have a good, healthy relationship with yourself as well. I like the way that that was explained. Okay. So we went over how boundaries and how has lack of boundaries affected me, and then how they affected others. When you don't have boundaries, it's almost like you have a person that's a really good person, quote unquote good person, very giving and stuff, but they don't have boundaries. They just allow people to overstep. And I feel like sometimes that can be, you know, it's detrimental to yourself. And I've definitely been that person. I'm a little different, I feel like, because even when people overstep and step on me and stuff like that, because of where it comes from and my heart and stuff, I try not to take it too hard. I know where I'm coming from as a person, but at the same time, not having those boundaries can actually cause a damaging effect to the relationship with yourself. Like, My lack of boundaries in the past have affected me, because then I'm sitting trying to figure out why people are crossing certain lines, or I'm loving, I'm giving, I'm caring, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and this and that, and now realizing like, okay, you're over giving, you're doing too much, you're being too nice, you don't have any boundaries for yourself. You know what I'm saying? You might have expectations of how you think other people should be based on how you are, how you act. You don't have boundaries for yourself though. And it can definitely make you cynical. It can make you question yourself and if you should be nice to people and kind to people, because we kind of show people how to treat us in a way. People should have common decency, but if you have those boundaries in place, can't just overstep, or you'll know. It's a way of protecting yourself. So in the past, because that's what my therapist asked me, like how the lack of boundaries affected me and affected others, and going over me not being good with boundaries, and where that, may have stemmed from for me. Where it's like I'm very like, if I'm blessed, I want other people to be blessed and stuff, but yeah, you have to have your boundaries. And that's just in general, like with your time, like not letting people just do whatever they want to and waste your time. People can't just be calling you at 2 o'clock in the morning and not feel bad for protecting yourself. Boundaries is a layer of protection and self-love for yourself. And then we end up going over loose boundaries. Okay, so I love this. So loose boundaries, make it real simple. Pretty much loose boundaries are more like suggestions. Like a boundary, think of a boundary as a non-negotiable. A boundary is literally for myself. Say my boundary is, I do not accept this under any circumstance, right? But then you do accept it. And I'm not, and I think things change. I think that, some people can have certain standards and things, and you might, if some things are negotiable. I feel like you have your negotiables, and then that's it. Your boundaries are your non-negotiables. When your loose boundaries are things that are suggestions. They're merely suggestions. And then for me, I was accepting people where they were, but I had loose boundaries, which you should do. You should accept people where they're at. Like I was saying, don't try to make boundaries to manipulate people and put certain stipulations. Like, your boundaries are your boundaries for a reason. Actually, I might kind of back up a little bit. I think boundaries have categories. Like, okay, like I said, you got your non-negotiables, you got your negotiables, and you got these loose boundaries. Loose boundaries are literally like, you supposedly have these strong boundaries in place. These are my non-negotiables. I'm not tolerating this. But then when stuff happens, you're like, nah. When the boundaries cross, you kind of like, whatever. You're not firm in it. You know what I'm saying? It's a suggestion. It's not a standard. It's a suggestion. And so even with negotiables, it's like, when you have a boundary, it should be a plan. Like, you should have your boundaries like, let's see. I don't accept being called out of my name, cursed at. That's a hard boundary. No matter what happens, I'm out of there, right? Or that could be a boundary of yours, and you're like, in the case that you might be cussed at or something, that is a boundary of yours. I'm not tolerating it. That you stop and you make it clear, like, hey, that's a no for me. That's a boundary. And the thing with boundaries is you have to be willing to stand on them. That's what the thing about boundaries. You got to be willing to stand on them. So loose boundaries is you're not really standing on it. I hope I explained that right. If you've ever heard of loose boundaries, comment below. Okay, so we're going into takeaways. For me personally, what I took away from it is lack of loose boundaries or no boundaries inevitably leads to abuse. ABUSE. That is something I came up with. Another takeaway from me was, with my boundaries, I think my lack thereof boundaries might have started with somebody I was dating. I was gonna be specific, but somebody I had dated, only because before that, I didn't intentionally set boundaries. I never really had a word for what I was doing. I just knew that, hey, if you do this, I'm not tolerating it, I'm out. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not really like, oh, you overstepped my boundary. I didn't really have a word for it. I just was really good at cutting people off. Like, really, 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 really well. And one thing I would like to say is, I had this thing of doing that, and I guess maybe there's an unhealthy way to do that with people, just cut people off really fast. For my protection, though, I feel like that helped me. And I actually got rid of a therapist before, because when I was like, look, I'm not dealing with this, and I'm off it. She was kind of like, do you think that you're being too harsh? Do you think that you're being too harsh? And something that I'm working on is, I'm working on having that middle ground where I'm not don't have super polarized thinking, because I'm either one way or another. I'm like in or out, in or out. Like, I'm not super big on gray areas. Another takeaway for me was boundaries can be a generational issue. I learned that just in my personal experience and me personally talking it through and realizing just relationships I've had from generationally from my parents and the way that they handle stuff to how I handle stuff with my parents and my parents handle with they and stuff like that. That lack of boundaries, poor boundaries can be a generational issue, and that's kind of what stemmed from with me. Having boundaries for yourself and your life show and teach people how to treat you. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to adhere to your boundaries. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to keep everybody. You will lose people because of the boundaries that you set, but you have to be okay with that. Another takeaway, one that I learned personally, was that some boundaries are across the board. Like, some boundaries apply to everybody, from your children to your parents to your friends to your coworkers. Like, some boundaries are across the board, no matter whoever the human being is, across the board. I guess unless they're like babies, like babies or stuff like that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, whereas I think some are tailored to specific people and relationships for me. Like, I have certain boundaries just based on maybe certain experiences I went through with certain people or the type of relationship I have. There's certain boundaries that I have for specific people. Application or goal. The big goal of the boundaries section is to be able to set the boundary. Something that I would say is forgive yourself for the decisions that you made while lacking boundaries. Start with forgiving yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's a very big part of it. I'm one that struggles. I deal with, like, some people, especially in the world we live in, have no shame. That is one of the things that I feel. And one of the emotions that I feel strongly. Some people feel certain emotions strongly. And I'm like, oh, shame. It's like, oh my gosh. So just forgive yourself for decisions you made while, lacking boundaries. Get to know yourself. Figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Your temperament, like, just really getting to know yourself, what you desire, what you need, and the things that you need to get there. It'll help you set the boundary. I started with my family and boundaries. That was the easiest way because, again, like I said, I realized it was a generational thing. So family is usually a lot harder to to say no to family can be difficult. So I'm like, okay, if I can tackle setting boundaries with my family by making it clear, like, this is my time, and utilizing my no. That was a big thing. Being able to really just say no and not be avoidant. That's the thing. Like, not be necessarily avoidant, because I'm the person that I'm just not going to answer my phone or something like that. And some people will get it and they kind of know me by now. They're like, whatever. But for me, that can cause anxiety too, because it feels like I'm kind of running from it. So instead of doing that, it's like, no, like, hey, it's after this time, it's not an emergency, we don't need to talk. Or just being able to outrightly say no. The answer is no. And sometimes not giving it a reason, but sometimes it's your family, and sometimes you want to give a reason. So that's where I started, was with my family and setting boundaries, because then I'm like, okay, if I can get that under control, I can pretty much set boundaries with anybody else. So I self-reflected. I realized what was bothering me and what I desired. I'm very self-reflective. I'm very introspective, and sometimes to my detriment. And I isolate because of boundaries. It's so weird how it turns out, but I self-reflected and just realized what was bothering me. Like, is it when people call me too much? Is it when people call me too late? Like, what exactly is bothering me when it comes to boundary? Like, what's irritating me, what's causing me anxiety and stuff like that? And then what do I desire? Like, what kind of relationships do I want? What kind of outcome do I want? A personal boundary for me is I set a boundary in dating when it came to, like, substance use. That was just so that I could view relationships differently. And that came from, again, I sat and I was like, okay, what is it that I desire? It's like, okay, I want a life partner. It's like working backwards. Like, I want a life partner. I want somebody that's healthy. I want this. I want that. I want these kind of outcomes and things like that. And it was like, okay, so I know for me, dating and substance use there's certain boundaries that need to be set around that for me. Since lack of boundaries inevitably leads to abuse, ABUSE, you can start to engage what's called reactive abuse. That's, again, why boundaries are so important, because it's that case of, since you lack those boundaries and you were stepped on and abused, you then start reacting abusively to protect yourself, and you don't want that either, because although you're reacting, you're still doing something wrong when you can prevent it by setting boundaries. So I gotta set boundaries, y'all. All right, next one. we're gonna go over left and right brain thinking. And hopefully you can see how these kind of roll into each other. But even if they're not directly related, you guys, it's just me going over key important things that maybe you'll relate more to boundaries than left and right brain thinking. Maybe you'll relate to, other topics. So the next one is left and right brain thinking, or being a left or right brain thinker. Here, right brain. Let's go over right brain first. And we're going to go over right brain because that is what, I guess, that's what I lean toward more. So the goal is to get to wise mind, which I will get to in the goal section. But right now, we're going to go over right brain. So right brain, I have a history, like I said, okay, in boundaries. And I have a history with being extreme. Hard to be in the middle. Right brain thinker is a lot of impulsivity. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so extreme. And that's more of what I lean towards. Right brain dominated typically is associated with creativity, being artistic, musical, nurturing, feelings. Like you're a big feelings. Feel. A right brain person does not feel like, this is from my therapist who says, if a right brain person does not feel like doing something, they will not do it until they want to avoid another feeling, like failure, punishment, embarrassment, things like that. The jobs that right brain people tend to have, and I thought this was so interesting because this is so me. This is so me. Are nurses, writers, artists. So I definitely was recently going to school to be a nurse practitioner in dermatology. I definitely write. I do poetry. I'm big on writing. I journal a lot. I be in my authoring bag. And artists. I'm a big creative person, and I lean more toward that. When I can't get that fixed, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's insane. Right brain thinkers tend to be procrastinators, and that's where that whole feel comes in. If you don't feel like doing something, you're gonna procrastinate until you're trying to avoid another feeling. Right brain thinkers tend to operate on stress mode, and I can definitely attest to that because I work very, very well under stress. It's the minute, tiniest things, simplest things that will stress me out. But when it comes to death, when it comes to just being in a tough situation, like I operate so good on stress. I used to do so good on tests and stuff like that, or waiting till the last minute and cramming and things. So that is very much, that applies to me too. Right brain thinkers make more emotional decisions versus like left brain, which they're more logical. So it results in making poor decisions. So it goes back to that impulsivity. And those poor decisions lead to that resentment, regret, embarrassment, that shame that I was talking about earlier with the boundaries things and being impulsive, anger towards self, which will negatively impact confidence. And then it will cause people not to trust you because you're impulsive. And then you don't trust yourself. I feel like I said that with the boundaries part too. And then you're scared to make the decisions based off of that stuff. So you're procrastinating and you're stuck. And then you have this fear of making a decision, which causes you not to make any decision. And not making a decision is making a decision. So when you just like a decision needs to be made and you decide not to make a decision, that also has an impact. So you're still not making a decision. Right brain thinkers, it can take something really small for them to have feelings. And left is something major. So again, I'll get to the left brain, but a little bit about this. Like left is more logical. So it'll take something big for them to just really have feelings. And right brain thinkers is something really small, and it's like extreme. Like I've experienced that. So we're all trying to get to the wise mind, Right brain thinkers, also you can see it on their face. You can see it on their face. You can see it in their body language. You can see it in their tone. Which is so funny because if people know me or whatever, it's always, you can tell exactly how I'm feeling by how I look. My partner will tell me that. People around me will tell me that. It's on me. Kind of being introspective and I guess knowing that about myself. Although I am more right brain dominated, I know that I also need structure because to get to that good middle ground, or get, use both sides of the brain or whatever, I need that structure too. So with that, that's why I had chose like nursing instead of the medical field. Medical is more logical, it's more like cold and calculated, where nursing is more nurturing and things like that, which, I went over that in the job part. Another way to know that your right brain is how you cope with things. A right brain person's coping skills: writing, drawing, creative hobbies, things like that. And then this is going to be the end of this section as far as the right brain, as far as the breakdown. So when using right brain coping skills, my therapist suggested that You end on a positive. Start off with what is. So like if I'm drawing, I would draw what it is and then how I want it to be. So maybe I'll draw, I'll express myself, draw what's happening, paint, or do both. Paint what's happening, whatever, and then I'll paint or draw a picture of what I see, what I would like for it to be. Left brain. Alright. Left brain, they're more logical. That's what it is. Right brain, think very feelings based, opposed to just feelings. Left brain is like problem solving, logic, problem solving. Not so emotional. Very good at problem solving, very logical. That's how you know if you're a left brain thinker or a left brain, dominant person. Now, like I went over the downfalls with the right brain. The downfalls with being left brain dominant, not balanced, because these are extremes. So when I went over the right brain, that's like if you're an extreme right brain thinker. So I'm going over the extremes here. If I didn't say that, I apologize. So the downfalls of that would be you need both. You need a balance. You need a balance. You can't just be super logical, non-empathetic. They'll say things like this in conversation. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. They say that a lot. And I know. I have a partner like that. It's like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And what'll happen is when they're saying it doesn't make sense, they'll throw in stuff like, that's stupid, that's dumb. And when it gets to that, like, that's so stupid, that's so dumb, these are by my therapist's words. That's emotional ABUSE. So the way it's framed matters. Like, that's stupid, that's dumb, that don't make sense. And sometimes may not make sense to them. If it doesn't make sense to them, it just doesn't make sense. So that's a downfall. You can't be so rigid. Just because it doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. Also because it may not make logical sense. You have to leave room for being a human and having feelings and things like that. The jobs of left brain thinkers are usually higher up. You're sociopaths. No. No, but yeah, the jobs like higher up, CEOs are usually all left brain. Doctors. So instead of the nursing, like if I was more left brain, I probably would went in the medical field because it's not necessarily patient care dominated. It's more about, okay, this is the issue. How do we fix it? This is the problem. How do we solve it? Also, you will know your left brain dominated because they push down feelings. So instead of being super expressive in feelings, being super impulsive, you push down your feelings or they push down their feelings and they make them insignificant. And my therapist told me that is emotional abuse to yourself. When your like feelings are just never significant, like at all. So yeah, disregarding your own feelings is emotional abuse, ABUSE to self. Okay, so an example here. Let's see. Example of the left brain disregarding feelings, and then it comes out later. They push out, and then it kind of just explodes. The example we went over was like grandma. Like grandma passes or something. No emotion happens and stuff. And they feel some type of way, but they're so focused on, we gotta bury grandma. We gotta get grandma this. We gotta do this for the funeral, and this and that, and all this stuff. And they just constantly push down in feelings and never address it, and they can go on for like they just won't address it. Like, you ever meet those people where something happened, and this was a weird topic, not a weird topic to me, but I feel like some people just deal with certain things differently. But I guess it's like it'll be something that is really bothering them or something that they need to address or something that's affecting them, and instead of addressing it, it'll just linger. They'll explode like 2-3 years later, maybe months later. But it can really be like years later. So pretty much what happens is they'll push down and feeling so much, and then it forces itself out later. Like something major happens and then they show emotion. Like something major happens that maybe is completely unrelated, or they've been constantly just not addressing something, not addressing stress, not attending to something bothering them over time, and it just forces itself out. The difference with the physical thing is with left brain people, or left brain thinkers, left brain dominated people, is that you can't tell what's going on. And these tend to be the people that people don't check on. These tend to be the strong people, because these are not the people that wear emotions, and if something is going on, they're not going to tell you. They're not going to be emotional about it. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm not doing great, and all this other stuff. I also would like to say, personally though, I'm right brain dominated, but I'm also a very strong person, viewed as that. So people don't check on me like that either, or they didn't. So, but I'm gonna go based off of what therapist said. Now we're gonna go over what happens when a left brain thinker or left brain dominated thinking person and a right brain dominated thinking person gets together. Okay, so what'll happen is if the right brain thinking person is always on 10, because feelings. If a right brain person is always on 10, then a left brain person will not trust them to be able or be capable to handle their stuff as well. Like if I'm the right brain thinker, I'm always on 10, and my partner is a left brain thinker or dominated, they may not trust me with their emotions. They may not feel like they can come to me and things like that because I'm always on 10, or because I can't even handle my own emotions. So how am I going to handle yours, you know? And so left dominated will keep things from right dominated because they care about right brain. Remember, I'm talking about healthy relationships too. I'm not talking about being manipulative, lying, like doing weird stuff, but I'm talking about just follow me, healthy. So because left brain cares about right brain, they will keep things from the right brain to not overwhelm. And I completely have experienced that. Of course, if something's kept from me and sometimes, or I find something out, I feel betrayed or I feel, but I've definitely gotten that response or that reasoning. Like, I just didn't want to, like, put that on you overwhelmed. I didn't want to, do that. Which goes into the next point. Right brain, especially if you have insecure attachment, which we're going to go to attachment styles next. Right brains, especially with insecure attachment, may not be able to tell left brain cares, and they will do the most to get a non-verbal reaction or to get left brain riled up. So I'm going to say that again. Right brain, especially with insecure attachment, may not be able to tell that left brain cares because they don't have those verbal cues. They don't get all over emotional. They're not super on 10. They're very just, so they will do the most to get a non-verbal, so a physical reaction, some kind of reaction that's non-verbal to get left brain riled up. Okay, so that was the breakdown of left and right brain dominated, which again, those were the extreme of if you're extreme right brain or extreme left brain. Now the takeaways: don't be too left or right brain dominated. Don't do it. Like, just don't be that way. No, but yeah, you don't want to be either one. Now, which one you think is better and more useful, that's personal. Another takeaway is, and this is probably the biggest takeaway, and this is something that really helped me because it validates me, but it also gave me something to look forward to. Like, your feelings are valid. Your feelings are a signal as a person, right? As a human being. Feelings are a signal. They're there to communicate or to use to do certain things. They're a signal. They're useful. So it's not right brain thinkers or right brain dominated people. It's not just, oh my gosh, don't feel at all. Because trust me, I've had that in my mind where I'm just not going to feel. I'm going to get so like focused, calculated, this and that. Feelings are not, you know what I'm saying? No. As a human, that's, you have feelings. But the thing is, you don't want to be led by those feelings. You don't want to be led by those feelings. And that gets us to the left brain. So acknowledge the feelings, understand they're there, see what what they're communicating, what do they need to be used to do, and then don't be led by the feelings. Then that's when you kind of start to try to use your left brain, start to be a little logical, more problem solving. Now, application or goal, how you all can apply, and or goal. The goal is to be wise-minded. Now, what's that? What's wise-minded? Because that's the whole point. We got to. Wise mind is to feel your feelings, but not controlled by your feelings, and be able to problem solve and cope through it in a healthy way so that you can still feel good about how you deal with the feeling. So I'm gonna say it again, and kind of put a spin on it there. So your wise mind, getting to your wise mind is feel your feelings. That's the first step. But you're not controlled by your feelings. And you're able to problem solve and cope through it in a healthy way. So not imposing, not being on 10, not, going crazy. So you can still feel good about how you deal with the feelings. So the whole process is a good process. And a little tidbit here, I'm going to drop this. Because I think I brought up polarized thinking in the boundary section. Now, my therapist did tell me I have polarized thinking, which we didn't go too deep. We didn't dive too deep into that, but let's do a definition. Polarized thinking is a cognitive distortion that tends to occur when individuals view the world in black and white terms without any shades of gray. Okay, so I did say that. So yeah, that's crazy. Because that is how it's like, no, it's either this or that. It's this or that. And again, I have a partner that's like, it's not that. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, just because it's not this doesn't mean it's the complete opposite. Like, there is gray. Polarized thinking, I'm gonna go to it a little bit, but again, we didn't dive too deep. We don't want our thinking to be something is 100% good or 100% bad, meaning if it's not 100% good, then that means it's 100% bad. That is not how it works. That's not how life works. You got to get to the gray area. When you get into that gray area, even if something's going bad, you want to identify something that went right or went good. You want to identify those so a person does not feel defeated. You yourself, you don't feel defeated, because when you're a polarized thinker and you're viewing everything as 100%, it has a very big impact on your motivation, your hope, and your mood, and things like that. Which has me thinking about how that may work in terms of like depression and anxiety, which I'm not sure. But yeah, so you want to identify what may have went wrong, but what also may have went right, and try not to be so extreme. That's that. We're going to move on now. Next point here, we're going to go over attachment theory and style. It's secure attachment, insecure attachment, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I know if you Google it, they'll say it's 3 types, like insecure, anxious, avoidant, secure, and they kind of go together. So we're going to go over secure and insecure attachment. Now, breakdown here. Through our conversation, my therapist, we ended up going over it because she was able to hear my attachment style through our conversation. And it starts in the home. It starts in childhood. Go figure. The overall theory of attachment is, in childhood, we attach positively or negatively, and it affects how we attach to others in a healthy or unhealthy way. So, secure attachment. We're going to do the breakdown there. What is it? I'm going to look it up, and then I'm going to break down how my therapist kind of explained it. That's how I like to do it, so I can give you a definition. It's an attachment where a child feels comforted by the presence of their caregiver. Now, secure attachment starts in the womb. That's why parents are encouraged to sing and talk to the baby in the womb, and is placed immediately in someone's hands once the baby is born. It helps a lot when a baby is premature. Secure attachment equals thriving, okay? Make sure y'all taking notes. Secure attachment is ultimately knowing that mom and dad are there. Consistently, you have realistic expectations of yourself and others. They can trust mom and dad or caregiver to comfort them, encourage them, trust that their parents or caregivers will meet their overall developmental needs, including but not limited to biological and social needs. And it creates a secure attachment that transfers over into your other relationships. That's why I said it really starts in the womb. It starts in childhood, but it starts in the womb, curating that, and then it shows up later in relationships. So, ways to tell how a baby or child is securely attached is they light up and respond. That's the biggest thing. They sleep in their own bed. And I'm not talking about just, when you're training your kid to sleep in their own bed. I know sometimes it takes a little bit, but they light up and respond. They sleep in their own bed. They go to school with no problem. They're able to do different developmental tasks. They're safe within and without parents present. So they have a very good sense of trust. Secure attached children are confident in themselves. They know it's okay to make mistakes without fear of judgment, and they're able to communicate effectively, assertively communicate what they need, and they're able to resolve conflict because they have a safe space. They have a safe space to do so. So then when they need to do that within their home or outside of home, they're able to do that. So you'll also know a securely attached child or people in general. They're not clingy, they're not needy. They can be by themselves or with others. They have healthy boundaries and realistic expectations of themselves and others, like I said before. So now, insecure attachment. Insecure attachment is an individual relationship can be insecure when it contains elements of mistrust together with anxious or avoidant elements and lacks a secure base. I don't know. I don't like that. More simply, the definition is a lack of trust and a lack of a secure base. We're going to go with that one. I like that one better. So, a few things here. How you know, these are kind of like just a breakdown. Fixing, which we're going to go over too. We're going to go over that next, I believe, in the next topic. But fixing is a result of insecure attachment. Sabotage is a result of insecure attachment. And we went over just how I definitely have had some fixing tendencies and how it would feel if someone felt like I needed to be fixed myself. And she asked me how I would respond, and pretty much I just said I would be offended because there's an insinuation there that I'm broken. And so that's what also happens when you go off trying to fix people. It's not great. Identifying it in a child, so insecure attachment in a child, they're going to be scary, can't sleep by themselves. These are opposites. Always up under their parents, cry when they go to school because of fear of letting go, which I actually experienced all the way up to like the second grade. Like the second grade, I think I cried all the way up until then. I would not go to school. I used to have to get carried in the class. Identifying insecure attachment in adult relationships, having those loose boundaries that we talked about back in the boundary segment. So if you don't remember, go back to boundaries and see what I'm talking about when I say loose boundaries. And they let people in, too fast, too soon, just doing a lot. And people in hoping that they get the things that they didn't get as a child. That's how you identify it in adult relationships. Next part. Things like postpartum, depression, substance abuse issues, trauma, etc. can result in non-secure attachment because mom is depressed and unable to bond. So when I was saying how the attachment starts in the womb, if mom has postpartum, if you're depressed, if you're not able to bond with the child in the womb or thereafter, that can definitely create an insecure attachment for you as a child. Generational trauma can also cause an insecure attachment. This is just helping you identify if you have insecure attachment. It is by pretty much you've been parented out of fear. Like you're parenting by creating fear from one's own trauma. So like, not saying this is necessary. I don't think this is necessarily bad. I think you do have to teach your kids danger, but the example my therapist used was when great grandma went through something and parents out of fear, even if the child hasn't experienced great trauma, like don't do this, be, but I don't know. To me, that I don't know. I think that's something you should misperceiving relationships, and then if you have those loose boundaries as an insecurely attached person, they pull away or they take advantage. They do one of the two. And then what happens in that, this sounds so like me. This sounds so familiar. What happens when you pull away from an insecurely attached person? They can be clingy, argumentative, fault-finding, manipulative. Mama's boys are also a really good example of insecure, attached, created individuals. And the way that dynamic actually works, I don't know if people know, but how it actually works is mom will be controlling, manipulative, threaten or guilt trip for the boy to be in her life. Like she doesn't allow him to be a man out of fear of him growing up and not needing her. Nothing as an example really need to help think of mom's boys. Next here, how adult relationships are affected by insecure attachment. Some ways that they're affected. So we talked about sabotage. So an insecure attached person will sabotage what they truly and like really desire. Abandonment is also a form of insecure attachment. People who grew up abused either take on those personalities or they bring it out in the relationship that they're in. So that's how it shows up too. It shows up toxic relationships have a lot of insecurely attached people in them. And by that abandonment, let me move back to abandonment because I just kind of threw that in there. Abandonment and insecure attachment. A person that's been abandoned will gravitate to a person that's more likely to leave them, and then out of fear of being left, they will do and say things to sabotage or push them away. So instead of just finding somebody that's not going to leave or abandon them, they kind of, they kind of gravitate toward those people, and it makes sense. It makes sense too, because you'll also find yourself trying to, which I feel like I'm gonna go into this in fixing, but you'll also find yourself trying to fix in the person you're in the relationship with what you didn't get from your parents or your caregiver. So you're attracted to exactly what you saw, your first loves essentially. And what that's called is unfinished business. Pretty much the things that you were not getting or the things that you were not able to fix in your parents or your caregivers or whatever, like they had a drug problem or something, you may gravitate towards somebody that has a drug problem and try to fix them because you have unfinished business. So you're trying to be good enough to be able to fix that in another person, essentially. Takeaways. I definitely in my life have gotten intimate too soon due to self-sabotage, which I knew, but my takeaway from it is it was a byproduct of insecure attachment. I definitely had insecure attachment as a child. Like I said earlier, if you didn't hear me, that I cried up until like the second grade, third grade. I had to be carried into class, and it's the oddest dynamic where I'm not gonna get too in depth, but for the environment to have been so highly filled with anxiety and things like that, and some elements of ABUSD or whatever, I definitely wanted to clean. Like I didn't feel safe enough to be out in the world around people. I didn't want to be in school. I didn't want to be around people and things like that. So I guess I didn't have that trust. I realized that my daughter, a beautiful thing, breaking these generational curses. My daughter is securely attached, which is something I didn't know there was a word for, but she completely different experience. When she had to go to school, she was like, peace out. Like, I'm out of here. Great, have fun, bye. Which I love for her. And she can speak up. She can do that. So I think that there may have been moments where, or maybe have been a moment where I had to switch her a little bit, but she's securely attached. So the goal, so we're going into application goal, how I apply, how you can apply. What the goal is to get to a secure attachment or be securely attached. How I was able to. Therapy, first of all, that's what you have to kind of identify if you're insecurely attached first and maybe figure out why. I don't know if figuring out why necessarily matter, but you can, delve into that if you want to. And a quote that she said to me, and that's why I say I don't know if you need to delve back into that and figure out why you're insecurely attached and all that stuff. A quote that she said to me was, "Everybody's not safe for you to work out your stuff with," and I love that. That's amazing to me. But yeah, I would say maybe getting into some therapy or just identifying and seeing like, okay, am I insecurely attached? Did any of these things apply to you? And if that is what you are, go back to what securely attached people do or what they are and see how you can get to that. We almost there, y'all, I promise. Okay. Fixing people. This is kind of a side note, kind of. We briefly gonna go over this one. Breakdown. So, you remember where I said that where boundaries are loose, not present, and things like that, ABUSC inevitably occurs. So, my therapist kind of asked me, like, not kind of asked, she asked me, like, why I stayed where there were no boundaries present and where ABUSC inevitably occurred, like why I stayed there. And so that's kind of how we got into the fixing of people. And then from that fixing is how she got my attachment style. And then we went over that. How would you feel if somebody came in and tried to fix you? Because that was something that I've tried to do in the past with people. And then that might have been a projection thing. And it gives a sense of superior and inferior. When you're the person trying to fix somebody, that puts you in a position where you're superior and they're inferior to you. And then again, like I said, this is probably gonna be quick. It seems like I might be repeating a few things, and went over the whole unfinished business. And this goes into fixing because it's when you could not fix your parents, and so you pick a partner with similar traits. And if you are successful at fixing them, then you will deem yourself worthy and lovable. So I'm gonna say it slower so you can write it down. Unfinished business. Unfinished business is when you could not fix your parents, so you pick a partner with similar traits, and if you are successful at fixing them, you will deem yourself worthy and lovable. So like I said again with the examples, it would be parents that were neglectful or abusers or something. You find a partner like that and then you end up attracting a partner that resembles that. And then if you are able to fix them, then you become lovable, desirable, worthy, etc. Takeaways: it's offensive to try to fix people when they did not ask to be fixed. I know that's crazy. Like, who would ask to be fixed? Some people actually do, but I know it sounds weird, but think about that. As I say, it is offensive to try to fix somebody when they did not ask you to fix them. Another takeaway: I had unfinished business. I feel like, but by way of abuse and neglect. Again, I'm not being specific on the person. Don't flow off and start assuming who, what, when, where, and how. But one of my exes did mirror one of my parents for sure, and I did try to fix them really, really bad. Like, they're that person, this and that. You gotta, whatever. Next takeaway is to accept people where they are. And don't try to force someone to be what you want them to be, because that takes away their autonomy, and everybody deserves their autonomy, okay? So we don't want to do that. Now, the application or goal, how I apply, how you can apply, and or the goal is to, because we're talking about relationships. In this scenario, I would say we came up with, let your partner know about your unfinished business. If it's a secure and safe relationship, because everybody is not safe to work your stuff out with. That was the quote that I love. So you want to let your partner know about your unfinished business, or letting the people know around you, maybe just people you decide to form intimate relationships with, what your unfinished business is. And make sure that's a secure and safe relationship, of course, because you don't want to be overindulgent. Let somebody know all your vulnerabilities and things like that. and it's not a safe and secure relationship, it can turn very manipulative and toxic and things like that. This brings us to the last point. And in closing, since we just said, make sure it's a secure and safe relationship. So what is that? What's a secure and safe relationship? The breakdown here, we were talking about fixing, and this led to the secure and safe relationships and how it should be expressed to your partner and things like that, or people that you're dealing with, and the things that you are dealing with or have gone through. And again, everyone's not safe for you to work your stuff out with. A big thing, big part of the breakdown, it is important for them to know so they can assist you, not fix. We're not fixing. We're not fixing. We're not fixing this. We're not fixing each other. We're not fixing. We can inspire your people, but that's ultimately like not up to you. You want to let them know so that they can assist. And by safe and secure means emotionally safe. So the takeaway that we ended up coming up with was you want it to be emotionally safe. An emotionally secure and safe relationship, which is let the person know so they will know what your triggers are. Because if your significant other mirrors things from childhood, it will be harder to heal, and it will cause the insecure attached to try harder to fix because they couldn't fix mom or dad. So you want to just let them know so that when triggers come up, when things come up, again, they can assist you if they can. Or I'm saying so that I feel like either party isn't feeling some type of way, so that it doesn't impede on your healing, and then they not feeling like, whoa, like what's happening. They kind of know what's going on. Application, goal, how I apply, how you can apply, or the goal would be going to therapy and working through things. That's the way to figure out how to have secure and safe relationships, I feel like, is going to therapy. Especially if you don't have a good grasp on what that is, what healthy looks like, what secure, safe relationships look like, you need to seek professional assistance. Or I don't know if you're into religion, I don't know if that helps too, but if it has stemmed from that insecure attachment and that trauma and stuff, you gotta get some professional help. But of course, the goal is to be in safe and secure relationships. So that's it, y'all. That is the end of therapy session number 1. Yeah, just let me know what you guys thought, because again, this is the first one, and we're gonna keep pumping it out. Make sure y'all go ahead and communicate with each other in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and most importantly, share. Remember, y'all create your own narrative. Until next time, bye.